Greetings and salutations, everyone. My name is Andrew Kirchhoff, and welcome to my YouTube channel. Today, we're going to be talking about the Week 12 waiver wire targets for fantasy football, all the names of the guys that you might be thinking of picking up for this coming week to help your fantasy lineups for those of you who are struggling with bye weeks coming up in Week 13, which will have the Kansas City Chiefs and the Los Angeles Rams dealing with injuries, such as key players like Alex Smith going down, us wondering whether or not AJ Green is going to play this next week, and then targeting a couple guys, many of them being rookies, for this week's waiver wire targets. We'll go into that, and then after I go over the waiver wire targets for Week 12, I'm going to be going over the Week 11 standouts for the fantasy football week, giving you my thoughts on the performances of the quarterback, running back, wide receiver, and tight end position, and how that can potentially influence the next couple weeks of the fantasy football world. And that's pretty much it. So without further ado, before we begin, I just want to thank all of you who have already subscribed to my YouTube channel. But if you haven't yet already, please subscribe for more content on the daily. This week it's going to be packed with a lot of information because there's 3 Thursday night games, so I'm going to be bringing out a lot of stuff to the best of my ability, trying to answer as many questions as I possibly can. But if I can't answer your question on YouTube, go to my Twitter, @Kirchhoff, send me a question. I have an easier there's a higher possibility of me answering your Twitter question rather than your YouTube comment because I can see it when I'm not at home comparatively. So @Kirchhoff, if you want your questions to be answered at a little bit of quicker rate. Hey everybody, how's it going? Hope everybody's doing well. We're at Monday, Thanksgiving week, and I cannot wait till that Thursday dinner. Goodness gracious, it's not even a Thursday dinner. I don't know if I'm the only one, but I'm just eating like when I wake up till my eyes are closed. There's something like I'm snacking on something. It doesn't matter what it is. It's cornbread, maybe some ham. I start stealing a couple pieces here and there. Some of the Hawaiian rolls, my goodness, guys, it's too good. But anyway, let's talk about waiver wire targets for this coming week. All right, so Week 11 was quite the interesting fantasy week. Performance-wise, there weren't a lot of guys that stood out, but for those of for the guys that actually did stand out, by all means, they looked fantastic. And there are a lot of guys that, or majority of the guys that I'm talking about are rookies. Right, it's taken them 11 weeks to finally get to the point we've wanted them to get to, but we'll take it. Better late than never at this point. So a lot of the guys I'm talking about are rookies. We're going to start with number 1, Josh Adams, running back of the Philadelphia Eagles, a guy that I've mentioned multiple times on my channel on these waiver wire videos. Is a guy you should pick up. I ranked him last week somewhere in the 30s, right? I didn't have much hope, but I knew he was going to get carries, right? Doug Peterson had come out the week prior and he said, we're going to get Josh Adams carries. We need somebody to run the ball. Corey Clement had not been stepping up. Wendell Smallwood hadn't looked good. So they gave Josh Adams a try this past week against the New Orleans Saints. And we all know how that game went. It wasn't pretty, but Josh Adams was the lone shining light for the Eagles offense. The most productive piece of that offense, to be honest. Had 14 fantasy points in half-point PPR scoring, had 6 targets, which is also an important thing because Josh Adams, when you look at him stature-wise, he's a burly back. He's going to try to run downhill and deliver some damage. But on top of it, him getting opportunities in the passing game, that, in my opinion, gives me more confidence to when I pick him up, I can throw him into my lineup. And this coming week, he plays against the New York Giants. Now, I told you guys, when I was cursed with knowledge with my fantasy gauntlet, I knew that Peyton Barber of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers was going to have a great day against the Giants. What did he do? He went for over 100. The guy in the comment section, I know you are, you said, I'll take the bet that Peyton Barber doesn't have any yards, doesn't score. I said, I'd bet you that. Okay, now that I've won that bet, you can go down, just click the subscribe button, put a like on this video, and that's all I want. Okay, I don't want anything else. That's it. And if you've already done both of those, then we're even, buddy. We're even. Okay. Anyway, so Josh Adams this week, the last 3 games, the Giants have given up 100 yards rushing each game, right? And I'm pretty sure the Philadelphia Eagles, after getting embarrassed yesterday, by the New Orleans Saints, they have something to prove, right? They're the defending champs. Obviously, they're not as good as they were last season. And with, was it Jason Kelce, the center, going down with an injury yesterday early on in that game, obviously it hurts them. But to be honest, I think they're gonna come out and they're gonna beat up the Giants this coming week. I think Josh Adams is going to contribute a lot going forward. And this coming week, he is my number one waiver wire ad. If you don't already have him, I started him this past week in one in my leagues. By all means, he paid off. But if you don't already have him, he is a guy you should absolutely be picking up for your number one waiver ad this coming week. All right, number 2, the second running back I wanted to mention is Gus Edwards. Now, where did Gus Edwards come from? Okay, now, theoretically, no one could have possibly expected this. But I did look into it, and when Lamar Jackson, earlier on in the season, when he used to come in and run his option, wildcat BS, Gus Edwards was often the running back used in that formation, right? They would take out Javoris Allen or Alex Collins, and they'd bring in Gus Edwards, and then as soon as Lamar Jackson would leave the field, so would Gus Edwards. So I don't know if this coaching staff has figured out, okay, these two have a very good relationship. They run the option better than anybody. We can just run them and run the zone option and be done with it. And Gus Edwards came out and performed. I don't know if that's the case, but as of right now, I really don't even care. Because the fact of the matter is, as of right now, the rest of season schedule for the Baltimore Ravens, for the running back position, is one of the easiest. This coming week, they play against the Oakland Raiders, which David Johnson had himself a very good game this past week, over 120 yards rushing, if I'm not mistaken. Should have had 2 touchdowns, but he got hawked down the sideline. Gus Edwards, if he's continued to be given the ample opportunity, like he was this past week, 17 touches on the ground. If he's given that kind of opportunity on a weekly basis with Lamar Jackson being the starting quarterback of this organization, I think Gus Edwards' rest of season could have a lot of value. I mean, just the strength of schedule. Guys, let me just read who the Baltimore Ravens play in the next couple of weeks. Hold up. Here we go. So, the Baltimore Ravens play the next couple of weeks. Oakland, all right, which by all means, we know Oakland can't stop anybody doing anything. Somehow, they managed to beat the Cardinals, but that's just because the Cardinals don't know what they're doing either. Okay. Then the week after that, they play against Atlanta. And we've seen the last 2 weeks, Nick Chubb and Ezekiel Elliott tear up the Atlanta run defense, right? Then the week after that, the Kansas City Chiefs, who are giving up the most points to the running back position on the ground in fantasy this season. Then after that, they play the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, who are just as bad as anybody else in the NFL. Then they play the Chargers, who Phillip Lindsay just tore up yesterday. And then they play the Cleveland Browns. I'm telling you guys, Gus Edwards, there's the argument. He could potentially be the number one pickup. But the question is he really going to be given continuous opportunity, or was that just a fluke? That is the question. That's the risk you guys have to take. If you can get Adams and Edwards, or if one's already gone, bada boom, your decision is made. Otherwise, that's a good question. And as of right now, on Monday, I'm not sure if I have that answer. But we're going to move on. We're going to talk about the third running back that I wanted to mention. A guy that I mentioned on Saturday, this past Saturday, through the Fantasy Gauntlet video in the Hidden Gems. I talked about Peyton Barber and having a very good matchup against the New York Giants. And yes, even when I was delivering my spiel, I had some doubt, right? There's no guaranteed success. There's no guaranteed guys that are going to statistically perform on a weekly basis, without a doubt. We saw Zach Ertz this week, who dropped 38 the week prior, come out and drop 2. We saw Eric Ebron show up and drop 0 points this week. We've seen guys that are consistent and then they'll end up fizzling out. So at the running back position, especially with a guy like Peyton Barber, who he struggled this season a lot. This past week he played well, and I think rest of season schedule-wise, it's pretty advantageous for him. I mean, playing against the 49ers this week, I like the matchup personally. I think he could find some success there, especially with Jameis under center and them trying to run the ball and not turn over the ball 3 damn times in the first quarter. Then they play against the Carolina Panthers, which could be quite the struggle. But then later on in the season, Against New Orleans, actually, you know what? Now that I'm looking at the schedule, ooh, baby, maybe the next couple weeks is the only time. Maybe San Francisco and Carolina are the only games you can play them the next 2 weeks. Even then, that's actually quite, but hey, you know what? Here's the thing. They ran the ball 18 times with them. When you're giving the guy 18 carries, that's something to look out for. I'd rather have a running back that touches the ball 18 times than a guy that touches the ball 3, 4, 5 times, and I'm hoping he busts a play out, like Tariq Cohen, and then Tariq Cohen fumbles yesterday. It doesn't matter. Anyway, so here's the thing about Peyton Barber. I'm looking at his schedule. Doesn't look good. You know, having to play the Saints, the Ravens, and the Cowboys 3 back-to-back weeks, with all these teams being playoff bound, they're not going to be giving up much. So maybe the next couple weeks, San Francisco this week as a waiver wire ad, for those of you who are going to be missing Kareem Hunt and or Todd Gurley, could be a good option. I like it as of right now. The rest of the season doesn't look as good as I thought it would. All right, moving on. Number 4, we have Jalen Richard. Now, I've mentioned Jalen Richard a bunch of times. We know the spiel. He's the receiving back of this team. He continues to get touches because of the fact that the game script of the offense of the Raiders is revolving around, hey, we're down points. We need to throw in order to get some first downs and look decent. Now, this past week, after halftime, Jalen Richard came into the game, and there was no more Doug Martin. Doug Martin had an ankle injury this past week, which held him out the entire second half. Perhaps they're thinking to themselves, maybe we should just bench Doug Martin and just use Jalen Richard and what's that kid, Washington, as our 2 feature backs and be done with it. And I like that idea. Jalen Richard this past week, 11 carries, 61 rushing yards, still had some work in the passing game, had 10 points in fantasy. For those of you, again, who are looking for a guy that you can throw into the flex no matter what the matchup is on a weekly basis, Jalen Richard is your go-to this coming week and going forward. Honestly, this last couple weeks, Jalen Richard's been pretty consistent in half-point PPR. I mean, this season, he's been pretty good. Let me read the last 6 performances of Jalen Richard. 8.7, 8.6, 10.4, 6.9, 8.4, 10.8. Okay, great. So on average, he's an 8 to 10 point guy in half-point PPR, which makes him just about, depending on the amount of receptions, 10 to 12 points in a full-point PPR. Seems good to me. So anyway, Jalen Richard, he's my number 4 option that you guys can consider for this coming week. The last guy I wanted to mention, again, Rashaad Penny. I have to mention him again. Here's the deal, okay? Mike Davis is in that backfield, but I honestly don't think they want to turn to Mike Davis on a weekly basis. Here's the thing about Rashaad Penny. If and when Chris Carson gets injured again, because his body's not going to completely hold up, right? They don't have a bye week coming up. They don't have a week off. Obviously, they'll treat him as much as they can in order to keep him healthy. But as of right now, Chris Carson going forward with that nagging hip injury, if and when he goes down, Rashaad Penny is going to basically inherit this backfield in which they continuously run the ball upwards of 30 times a game. That's what they do. The Seahawks are built for that. Their offensive line is built for that. And for those of you who are looking towards the playoffs, I'm telling you, in the next, 3 weeks, I think the Seahawks, if I'm not mistaken, the next 3 weeks play the 49ers twice. Maybe it's not the next 3 weeks. Maybe it's the next 4 weeks. Let's go ahead and confirm this. Okay, so in week 13, all right, the week before playoffs, they play against the 49ers. The Seahawks do. Then in week 15, they play against the 49ers. And this Seahawks team, just coming off that win on Thursday night, they want to make the playoffs. And in the next 4 weeks, 2 of their games against the 49ers, what do you think is going to happen? They're going to barrel over that team, and they're going to annihilate them. There will be fantasy points for all of us that have Seahawks players, and I think Rashaad Penny needs to be picked up in your league. Unless you're playing in an 8 to 6 man league where you literally don't need him. Sure, okay, but for those of us who are 10, 12, 14, 16, he's got to be picked up. I'm sure he is already in those 16, 14 team leagues. They're already gone, and probably even in 12, but just wanted to put that out there. A guy you guys have to pick up, especially with Chris Carson's injury history this season. All right, so those are the running backs that I wanted to mention for this coming week. Let's go ahead and move on to the wide receiver position. Another bunch of guys that, by all means, had some good weeks here, okay? So again, as I mentioned, next week we have the Rams and the Chiefs on a bye week. Keep that in mind for those of you who are owners of Josh Reynolds, who I saw catch a touchdown, had a baby, filling up that Cooper Kupp position just the way we wanted it to. Anyway, so here we are. We're going to talk about the first wide receiver for our waiver wire targets. It's DJ Moore. Mentioned this guy a handful of times. I mean, I've had him as a hidden gem. I've had him everywhere, right? On this waiver wire episode, I've had him ranked. I've had him as a start of the week this season. And every time he disappointed. Every single time. But here's the deal, okay? As of right now, Devin Funchess of the Carolina Panthers is a garbage can. Plain and simple, okay? Listen, now you might be thinking, that's his livelihood, that's his job, don't talk about it. Statistically, the man is not doing his job. Okay, you cannot come out on a weekly basis and put up those numbers and expect to be a number one wide receiver in the NFL. You can't get paid like that, right? Technically, he's giving it his best. He's, all the targets thrown his way. That's as much of an opportunity he's going to get. But if you're throwing the ball 8 times and you catch it twice against a defense that the week prior gave up Allen Robinson and Anthony Miller 20 points apiece, and you end up with what, 4.5, almost 5 points in fantasy, that's embarrassing. So Devin Funchess, I mean, I guarantee that your snap counts, they'll be decent, they'll be up there, but your opportunity is going down. Sooner or later, DJ Moore's taking it. Because this last week, DJ Moore, 8 targets, 7 receptions. He had the same amount of targets as you, Funchess. What are you going to do? Your job's going to eventually disappear to this rookie. 7 receptions, 157 receiving yards, and a touchdown. 25.2 fantasy points in half-point PPR. I think he's arrived, ladies and gentlemen. That's the deal. And going forward, the Carolina Panthers have a fantastic rest of season schedule. Yes, they play against the Seahawks this week, but Seahawks, throughout the entire, at least the last 5 weeks, when I mentioned Devontae Adams this past week in my rankings, the Seahawks give up a bunch of points to the number one wide receiver. If you go look at every number one wide receiver that the Seahawks have played as of late, whether it's Devontae Adams, Brandon Cooks, Keenan Allen, they're giving up hundreds of yards to these guys. They're giving up a lot of fantasy points. Hopefully DJ Moore can do that for us this coming week. But rest of season, they play against Tampa Bay, Cleveland, New Orleans, Atlanta, New Orleans. These are going to be shootouts, plain and simple. Okay, I know New Orleans' defense is trending upwards as of right now, but these are going to be shootouts. And if DJ Moore is the number one wide receiver, you want him on your team going forward. So he's my number one guy. Theoretically, this list, it can be, changed. It's not technically a 1 through 7. This is the way I'd pick them up because obviously everyone's league is different. I just have OCD and I need to put numbers in front of their names. I have to. So this is just a compiled list, nothing specifically in order. Okay, so number 2 is Doug Baldwin. Now, I doubt it, okay, but I wanted to mention it. I had to. If Doug Baldwin is somehow sitting on someone's waiver wire, please go pick him up. Before anybody, he should probably, if you're struggling at running back, okay, I can understand the idea of going and getting Josh Adams or Gus Edwards this coming week. But Doug Baldwin has to be rostered. Please tell me he is and that I'm wasting the next 15 seconds talking about him. But other than that, it's Doug Baldwin, guys. If you don't already know, he's been the number one wide receiver for the Seahawks team for the last couple of years. Came out this past week, had a touchdown, should have had 2, but Russell Wilson didn't treat him well, threw the ball way over his head. But anyway, Doug Baldwin's been a stud, been a number one wide receiver for a good amount of time. He should be picked up. That is all I'm going to say on the matter. All right, the next guy I wanted to mention is Keke Coutee. He plays against the Titans this week. The Titans, with Marcus Mariota going down, they're not going to be able to function, especially against the Texans, who are on a 7-game winning streak. Keke Coutee this past week had himself a very good fantasy week. Thank God he's healthy. But here's the thing. Here's the question. Demaryius Thomas ended up with 0 points. Are we going to see that again? I'm not sure. But what I'm really confident about and what is kind of exciting me about Keke Coutee's outlook rest of the season, 9 targets. That is it. 9 targets. That is amazing, especially coming off of 3-4 weeks where he hadn't played due to the injury. That's fantastic. 9 targets. He had 5 receptions for 77 receiving yards. It's fantastic. And rest of the season, playing against the Titans this coming week, Then he goes into a matchup where the next following 3 weeks, Cleveland, Indianapolis, and New York Jets. Those are 3 great matchups going forward. A little bit deeper into the fantasy playoffs, plays against Philadelphia, who we've seen their secondary has been struggling as of late, and then Jacksonville. But that's in Week 17, and many of us don't play in Week 17, so no worries. So Keke Coutee, for sure, guys, if he's available, please pick him up. All right, number 4, John Ross. I told myself I wouldn't do this, but I have to at this point. When you come out 2 weeks in a row and you score a touchdown each game, both of them in the red zone, you have to be mentioned. John Ross, as of late, due to the absence of A.J. Green, that has forced Tyler Boyd to pretty much disappear, and John Ross has been the red zone threat, I guess. I don't know how that's possible, but he has been. The last 2 weeks, he's had 13 targets, 4 receptions, so barely 25%. Barely 30% catching percentage, and 2 touchdowns. Total amount of yards. For a guy that's a speedster and he's breaking records at the combine for his 4.2 speed, he only has 6 yards receiving. Hopefully he can break one off. This coming week plays against Cleveland and then Denver and then Chargers. Okay, those are some tough schedule, but I mean maybe into the playoffs against Oakland and Cleveland. But then again, AJ Green will be back by then. So John Ross, I mean, for those of you who are really struggling, could be a decent play against Cleveland this week as the Bengals play at home. But then again, he's scored touchdowns. It's undeniable. But can we trust a guy that's getting 13 targets, only catching the ball 4 times? I'm not sure. But he's a guy I had to mention just to make sure that we cover all of our bases here. All right, the next guy I wanted to mention, this is what I'm excited about. Tre'Quon Smith. Okay, so here's the question at hand. Is Tre'Quon Smith going to continue to get targets, or was this another fluke? Because we've seen Tre'Quon do kind of stuff like this earlier in the season. That one game that Drew Brees broke the record for most, I think, passing yards. Most passing yards in NFL history. He had Tre'Quon Smith catch 3 balls for 111 yards and 2 touchdowns. Then after that, we were all hyped. Oh, Tre'Quon, right? Because we thought, all right, maybe he can actually do something. Then Cameron Meredith went on IR. Then they signed Dez Bryant. Our Tre'Quon value went down. Then he tore his Achilles. Boom, Tre'Quon went back up. Then ended up this past week with not this past week, the week prior in Week 10 against the Bengals, where they scored 51 points. He had 0 points. Now we were thinking, wow, I guess they really don't need him. This past week, by all means, they need him, and he proved that he deserves to be on this team and continue to get targets. He needs, it's unbelievable. 13 targets, 10 receptions for 157 and a touchdown, 26.7 points in half-point PPR. Incredible performance. And one of the things that honestly I'm not really surprised about, because we know that a Drew Brees-led offense, especially the way that the Saints are playing right now, they need another guy to feed the ball to. Michael Thomas isn't going to be open. And if they're not feeding the ball to Kamara, even though he plays on the outside sometimes as a receiver, and Mark Ingram, and they're not going to feed Ben Watson, and Brandon Marshall's, not learning the offense for a while, Tre'Quon's going to step up, hopefully rest the season. This next couple weeks, guys, it's clean. Atlanta, Tampa Bay, Carolina, goodness gracious, it's going to be shootouts in the NFC South, and Tre'Quon's going to be involved. He's a guy that he probably should be at the top of this list, but then again, as I mentioned before, this is not a list. This is just my suggestions, and Tre'Quon, honestly, he could potentially be my number 1 suggestion going forward, but anyway, that's at least for rookies. He's an animal. All right, we're moving on to the next guy. It's Zay Jones. All right, so here's my thing. Last time we saw Zay Jones was in Week 10. He played with Matt Barkley, scored 2 touchdowns. Now the question is, can Zay Jones do the same or similar statistics, have any sort of relevance against the Jacksonville Jaguars? I think there's a possibility. The last time we saw him, 11 targets, 8 receptions, 93 yards, and a touchdown. That's fantastic stats. So here's my suggestion as of right now. I don't think he's a pick-up and play for this week, but the following weeks, I like his matchups. Playing against Miami, New York Jets, and Detroit, and then a little bit of New England and Miami again. those are good matchups. You have to play against the AFC East, which is basically their division. He plays against everyone that they're pretty much comfortable with, and I like the matchups against Miami and New York and Detroit. He's a guy that if you were playing in a thinner league and Matt Barkley is still the quarterback there, I like his upside. This coming week against a guy like Jalen Ramsey, maybe not so much, but then again, he could end up doing something. You never know the amount of targets he gets. Anyway, Zay Jones, just wanted to mention him. He's a pretty good option going forward in the season. All right, number 7, the last guy I wanted to mention, Willie Snead. So from what we saw of the Ravens offense, I haven't mentioned Lamar Jackson, what he did yet, but with that offense and the way they pretty much had it assembled, it's not really an opened offense, right? They basically are running the ball or throwing short passes. And who's going to catch the short passes for the Ravens? It's Willie Snead. It's not going to be Michael Crabtree. It's not going to be John Brown. Those guys are the mid-range, over-the-top guys. Willie Snead is the slot. He's the guy that's going to catch majority of the balls, that are shorter passes. That when Lamar Jackson is looking for a guy to bail out and throw the ball to after he scrambles, it's going to be Willie Snead. And I think rest of the season, we've seen Willie Snead be relevant in some weeks in a PPR, but I think he can find a little bit more relevance if he continues to mesh with Lamar Jackson, find some rapport, and be decent, especially against the Raiders this week. I like the matchup. I like his opportunity. So he's a guy you can look out for if you're hurting at the wide receiver position. All right, so that's basically it. We're moving on to the quarterback position for Week 12 of the fantasy football season. My waiver wire targets. Number 1, it has to be Jameis Winston. No doubt about it. Now, here's the question. Is Jameis Winston going to get benched after 3 interceptions? I'm not sure. I can't guarantee that. But by all means, between all of these quarterbacks that are on the list, that are available guys that most likely won't be waiver wire available, will be waiver wire available for many of you, Jameis is the best option. Of all these guys that are going to throw for 300 yards and 3 touchdowns, who's it going to be? It's going to be Jameis. And looking at the Buccaneers' rest of the season schedule, I'm actually I'm pretty excited. Just here's the thing. Anybody who plays within the NFC South, which is the Buccaneers, the Falcons, the Carolina Panthers, and the New Orleans Saints, they are all going to try to kill each other in the next couple weeks. Everyone's playing each other. And the matchups are great because those defenses like to give up a bunch of points. Again, don't forget, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are the only team to beat the the New Orleans Saints this season, which was in Week 1. Anyway, we saw Jameis come in the second half, throw 12 for 16 passing, had 2 touchdown passes. He had that rushing touchdown attempt that ended up being a fumble into the end zone, which Mike Evans picked up. Those of you who own Mike Evans, you're welcome, I guess. But the next couple weeks for Jameis Winston, against San Francisco at home, against Carolina at home, against New Orleans at home, I like those matchups. Now, against Baltimore and Dallas, at Baltimore and at Dallas in the fantasy playoffs, that's not the best. That's not the best possible matchups. I'm not suggesting him for then. But as of the next couple weeks, if you're looking for a guy to pick up, especially if you're an owner of Fitz, you have to pick up Winston. I like his matchups in the next couple weeks. He should be good. Hopefully he won't get benched at halftime, but you never know. All right, number 2, Lamar Jackson. As I mentioned in my Hidden Gems video as the time stone, it was time. I didn't expect time to be that quickly a thing that just showed up. As I mentioned, I said, hey, guys, don't play him this week. I'm not sure who's going to be the starting quarterback. There was no Robert Griffin III. Even with Lamar Jackson missing Friday practice with an illness, he had to go to the hospital. I don't know what the heck was wrong with him. But Lamar Jackson broke the record for most rushing attempts by a quarterback in the Super Bowl era. Had 27 rushing attempts for 100 and some odd yards. I mean, goodness gracious, you got to be kidding me, Lamar Jackson. How is this? Okay, oh my God. How is he going to, just like this is what I'm mentally thinking, how is he going to physically sustain running the ball 27 times? With his size and stature, how is he going to sustain that? Especially against a good defense. Like, do they play Pittsburgh anytime soon? No. Okay, so here's the thing. The rest of their matchups are very, very advantageous for him. Oakland, Atlanta, Kansas City, Tampa Bay, and then LA Chargers in Cleveland. I'm telling you, man. Lamar Jackson could be a great option. I told many of you to pick him up, especially if you had an extra roster spot. Hopefully you did so, because if those of you who are struggling at quarterback, especially those of you who got hurt really badly by Fitz or hurt really badly by Mariota's injury, or maybe even Trubisky playing like a garbage can, Lamar Jackson could be a good option going forward. Just wanted to mention him. He's so dynamic. It's unbelievable. All right, number 3, we have Nick Mullens of the San Francisco 49ers playing against the Buccaneers. It's plain and simple. When you play the Buccaneers, you're going to score points. I don't care who you are. It doesn't matter. You can put Derek Carr against this Buccaneers team. He will score points because his defense is awful. Nick Mullens and the San Francisco 49ers, they've come out on a weekly basis and they've been competing. They're trying to pick up wins. They ain't throwing games. He's going to come out. He's going to look for some blood. He's going to find himself throwing touchdowns this coming week. He's going to have some success. So for those of you in thinner leagues, Nick Mullens is available. I like him a lot. And the last option. Okay, so here's the thing about Colt McCoy. As a Cowboys fan, I am a Cowboys fan. All right, I'll man up to it. How about them Cowboys, okay? But I'm also a Rams fan, all right? Leave me alone. And maybe sometimes a Chargers fan. This is what happens, okay? Before we get into Colt McCoy, all right? When you live in California, and you live in Southern California, but not to the point of like San Diego, or, just LA, okay? You live in LA, and there's not a team around you, and everyone, you could choose the 49ers, you could choose the Raiders, you could choose the Chargers, but I'm like, I'm not really feeling it. And I choose the Cowboys. The Cowboys, for some reason, they pop to me, and you become a Cowboys fan. But then after a while, the Cowboys suck, and you begin to become a realist. You're like, all right, Cowboys haven't won a Super Bowl since 1990, whatever. I wasn't even born, right, the last time they won a Super Bowl. And then the good old Rams roll into town. Then the Chargers roll into town. I'm spoiled at this point. All the teams that I could possibly root for are great. Both the LA teams. Cowboys might win the division. I'm probably thinking too optimistically, but that's what happens after Cowboy fans feel the taste of a victory. Anyway, let's talk about Colt McCoy. The last time Colt McCoy played in the NFL, last time he started as a quarterback, he beat the Cowboys. This coming week, he goes into Texas, playing in Jerry Jones Stadium, where Colt McCoy, to be honest, he's a Texas, he played for the Longhorns. He is a legend in Texas by all means. He's going back home, Thursday night, Turkey Day game. He's going to have some fans in the stands. I guarantee you, Colt McCoy will get some support in that stadium. And to be honest, if the Cowboys can't show up, there's a good chance that Colt McCoy can end up doing something. I think this offense might even open up with the absence of Alex Smith. Alex Smith is a dink and dunk kind of guy. Colt McCoy can open this up. For those of you, just consider it. Anyway, we're moving on to the tight end position. All right, here we go. Jonnu Smith, it's over. You had 3 great weeks. You are now an official guy. I mentioned you last week, but now you are officially the best tight end that is available on the waiver wires. Go pick him up. But then again, Mariota's out, so we'll see about that. Number 2, Antonio Gates. Even though you're 1,000 years old, just like Frank Gore, you managed to come up and be the best tight end in fantasy football this week with 16.5 points. What the heck? I don't know, but he had a lot of targets. He found some success. And for those of you thin at the tight end position, because when we go over the tight ends from this past week, my God, everyone was a trash can. Everyone. And it's unacceptable, but that's the tight end position as a whole. Number 3 and 4. Just wanted to mention these two, Chris Herndon, David Njoku, guys that I'm pretty confident in the rest of the season. The only reason I wanted to mention them is because of the fact that both these guys had bye weeks this past week. There is a good chance they are on your waiver wire. Many of your league mates may have went and dropped these guys in order to pick up a tight end. If they are available, I think both these guys have pretty good rest of season schedules and can be pretty. What am I trying to say? They can be successful in at least scoring some sort of fantasy points. I'm not going to say they're going to come out and score 10 points a week. That's not what they've done this season. Chris Herndon had a couple weeks where he was a 10 and 8 point kind of guy. But rest of season, I think they are decent options comparatively to what's around the league, especially with a lot of these tight ends that just don't want to show up. You would assume that Jack Doyle, if Eric Ebron ends up with 0 points, you'd assume Jack Doyle will have a good game. No, he had 4 points in half-point PPR. So anyway, these are the tight ends. So be it. We're moving on to the defensive waiver wire targets. All right, so we have a lot of options here, okay? So keep this in mind. Number one, New Orleans Saints. By all means, the last couple weeks, they have been clamping down on teams. So what if, okay, this team is legit on defense? What if they've turned a new leaf? What if they went back to being the 2017 Saints defense? What if the rest of the season, they end up just putting the smackdown on every single person? There's a good opportunity to that. I mean, you ended up almost shutting out the Eagles yesterday. I think the New Orleans Saints defense, yes, they're going to be playing against the Falcons and the Panthers and the Buccaneers in the next couple weeks, but there's a good opportunity. They've turned a new leaf, and this defense is really legit, and they can get after it, and they probably could win the Super Bowl this year. Anyway, that's my first option for you guys to consider. Number two, as I mentioned last week, the Patriots are going to come off of losing to the Titans, right? And they got embarrassed in week 10. They're going to come out and they're going to destroy the Jets. If you own the Patriots defense, fire them up. Otherwise, if they're available, by all means, you have to pick them up, and you should play them against the Jets. It's just free at this point. The Jacksonville Jaguars playing against the Bills. If they're available, play them. Otherwise, I'm doubting they're available because of the fact that it is the Jacksonville defense, and chances are whoever owns them in your league is just like, I refuse to drop them kind of mentality. But as of right now, if they're available against the Bills, that's a good matchup. Number four, Houston Texans. Because of the fact that Marcus Mariota left with an elbow injury and did not return, and he had dealt with that injury earlier on in the season, I'm leaning towards the idea that he does not play this week. And if that is the case, the Houston Texans versus Blaine Gabbert, by all means, that is a fantastic matchup for them, and they're going to slaughter Blaine Gabbert in that offense. So Houston Texans, they're a good defense if available. I doubt they are, but I just wanted to mention that. The last team, Baltimore Ravens versus the Raiders. That is going to be also another shellacking by all means. I like to say by all means, people. I don't know what it is. I'm going to try to stop. Well, let's see how many times I say it rest of the episode, okay? The last team I wanted to mention, Seattle Seahawks. Okay, so here's the thing about the Seattle Seahawks. Technically, this week, they don't have the best schedule, but from my perspective as of right now, when you play against the San Francisco 49ers twice in the next 4 weeks, all right, once in week 13 and once in week 15, so the week prior to the fantasy playoffs and midway through your fantasy playoffs, this is the defense you could pick up and stash and play them in your fantasy playoffs in order to help you win a championship. I'm telling you guys, I've already picked them up in my leagues. I'm confident in them in the next couple weeks so where I can ride out and just deal with getting 5 points a week. I'm okay with that. Just so that I can get to those Seahawks versus 49ers matchups where they're going to just tear apart the 49ers. So those are the defensive waiver wire options for week 12 of the fantasy football season. And that's basically it for the waiver wire targets. Now, we're going to move on to the Week 11 standouts, which I'll just give you a couple short opinions on specific performances. I don't want to really record anymore. We've already almost gotten to 39 minutes here, and I really want to go watch that end of that LA Rams and Kansas City Chiefs game, and I'm hungry and I haven't eaten dinner, okay? So, let's go through this. Drew Brees, you're a stud. What a surprise. You were the number one quarterback. Also, this does not include the Rams and Chiefs. As I mentioned, I want to go watch the game. It's going on as we speak. Number two, Cam Newton. Should have ran. When you go for a 2-point conversion and your name is Cam Newton, I understand your ankle was a little banged up. You left the game due to an injury. I understand that. But if you're Cam Newton, you're 6'5", you're 260 pounds, and you don't run the ball when the left side is completely naked open, to get that 2-point conversion, I don't know what you're doing. You threw the ball away, man. I mean, goodness gracious. Panthers fans, I'm sorry. That's unacceptable. Fantasy fans, you still got 30 points. There you go. Number three, Andrew Luck. You know the statistic I heard, which was actually blowing my mind? Andrew Luck hasn't been sacked in 5 weeks. Okay, so someone tell me, when When? Somebody tell me, please. Did the Colts have the best offensive line in the NFL? I know Anthony Costanzo is an animal. I know in 2016, okay, they had drafted interior offensive linemen. And their 3 interior offensive linemen in 2016 were all rookies. I remember that because I had Andrew Luck that year. And he continued to get sacked and just completely destroyed. Right? But now that I'm sitting here and I'm thinking, okay, maybe those guys developed into some monsters. Costanzo's healthy. The right tackle they drafted this past season in the draft. They've just managed to low-key create the best offensive line in the NFL. It's unbelievable. He hasn't been touched in 5 weeks. He continues to throw 3+ touchdowns in the last 7 games. He's an animal. The next guy, Aaron Rodgers, had a decent week. Could have been better if Mike McCarthy wanted to go forward on 4th and 2. Plain and simple. Number 5, Ben Roethlisberger somehow pulled it out of his ass. Those of us who played him, you were thinking, oh my goodness, he did it again. And you said it. They've lost to the Jaguars twice this past year. The year prior in 2017. The Jaguars have his number. Nope. Ben Roethlisberger stormed back in the 4th quarter and had himself a fantastic fantasy week at 24 and a half practically points in 6-point per passing touchdown leagues. Number 6, Phillip Rivers. Did a decent job, played well. That's what we expect. Nothing else. Andy Dalton. Wow. Andy Dalton. You managed to put up 23 points against the Ravens defense. Maybe you're not as bad as we think. But just when we begin to like you, Andy Dalton, you break our hearts. So I don't want to touch you. Number 8, we have Russell Wilson. Had a decent week himself. Didn't run the ball as much, which was kind of a surprise to me for the Thursday night game. But eventually we'll get some more yards out of Russell Wilson on the ground. Eli Manning at number 9. Again, that's his last best week. I sacrificed him in the Hidden Gem. Actually, you know what? Sterling Shepard did not pan out in the Hidden Gems video, so maybe Eli Manning can figure it out. We'll see. Number 10, Kirk Cousins. A lot of garbage time. Thank you, Stephon Diggs. And for those of you who own Stephon Diggs, all those stats came in the 4th quarter. You're welcome. All right. Saquon Barkley, 34.2 points. I mean, he is the entire offense, right, for this Giants team other than Odell Beckham. So we'll see how he does against the Eagles this week. Last time he played against them, he tore them apart. Should be good. Ezekiel Elliott, number 2. You've come to form. That's what we like to see. That's why we drafted you so high in our draft. You're finally figuring it out when we need you most. Aaron Jones, another great week. Philip Lindsay, another great week. Look at these damn young running backs just taking over the league. Mark Ingram looking like an old man, still number 5 with those 2 rushing touchdowns down to the goal line. Taking a little bit of value away from Alvin Kamara owners, but that's what's going to happen, I guess. Leonard Fournette, number 6, is going to have a good week against the Bills this next week. Gus Edwards at 7. Waiver wire pickup guys, by all means. There it is. There it is. By all means. Gus Edwards should be a good play rest of the season, especially he's given the ample opportunity. I like him going forward. If he's a starter, we'll see. Melvin Gordon, number 8, for sure. Number 9, Peyton Barber, which is basically the big surprise. But then again, if you watch Saturday's video, it's not much of a surprise. Number 10, Alvin Kamara, still ends up in the top 10 because of his receiving ability. Moving on to the wide receivers. How, T.Y.? Why? T.Y. did you catch 32 points worth of fantasy points, Hilton? That's the question. What did I rank him this past week? Probably like 13. I swear, I told you guys, if I'm not mistaken, I told you guys. The corners for the Titans are fake. They're not corners. They might not give up a lot of points, right, in the little thing that we go over. But by all means, Adoree Jackson, there's a by all means, by the way. Adoree Jackson and Malcolm Butler are not good enough corners for elite wide receivers, period. There's T.Y. Hilton. Mike Evans, I told you can't start him. I mean, you can't sit him. I told you cannot sit this guy. He is too good. I would feel too guilty if I sat Mike Evans and he popped off. Hopefully you didn't sit him. Tre'Quon Smith, waiver wire guy. DJ Moore, waiver wire guy. Stephon Diggs, 25 points in the 4th quarter alone probably. I don't know. Devontae Adams, stud muffin. Kenny Galladay, Mr. Hopefully. Marvin Jones is out for the rest of the year for those of us who own Kenny Galladay. Julio, 3rd touchdown in a row on consecutive weeks. Antonio Brown, I mean, the stud muffin himself. And Keenan Allen, Great week. Now we go to the last position I wanted to mention, the position of despair, distrust, and what's another word? Disrespect. How about that? They're disrespecting us, these dumbass tight ends. God, I mean, I cannot believe how bad tight ends have become. Like, we can't even trust Zach Ertz to put up 10 points. What happened? Where did it all go wrong? These offensive coordinators, they just want more fast guys on the field. They don't need tight ends. Where did the Jason Wittens of the world go? Where did Jimmy Graham go besides breaking his thumb, you know? Goodness. All right, Jordan Reed, you had a fantastic week. To be honest, you could end up doing some more damage the rest of the season. If Colt McCoy's the quarterback, he came in, he threw you the ball like 8 times. For those of you who own Jordan Reed, or if he's... Maybe I should have mentioned him in the tight end waiver wire video, but I don't know if he's available, to be honest, because the tight end position has been pretty thin, and I'm sure those of us who had him probably kept him. Antonio Gates, number 2. Robert Tonyan, Tonyan. I don't. No. He's like the 3rd string tight end for the Packers. Nope. Jared Cook. Goodness gracious, I hate you Raiders. O.J. Howard. Okay, that makes sense. Vance McDonald. Okay, that makes sense. Ed Dixon, you had 1 catch for a touchdown. We're done with you. Greg Olsen. Oh my God, you had 2 catches and like 16 yards and a touchdown. Evan Ingram. Decent. Jonnu Smith. And then we have where is Burton? Where is Ertz? Where is Doyle? Where is Ebron? Where is Hooper? What? Where's Gronk? I know you're on bye week, Gronk, but do something. Maybe be healthy this next week so we can figure something out. We need the number 1 tight end again. We need something. Anyway, I'm done ranting. I don't want to talk about tight ends anymore. They just, they disappoint me. Anyway, thank you everybody for watching. Tomorrow, here's the plan. I'm going to probably be putting out the running back and the wide receiver video tomorrow because of the Thursday night game. I need to have everything out before Thursday so that I don't have to answer 1,000 questions about Thursday night matchups and I can just sit down, relax, watch the game, eat my turkey and ham, and be satisfied. So tomorrow, wide receiver video, running back video could possibly be combined, and if they're not combined, they will be shorter than usual because it hurts to talk for 2+ hours on a single night. I've tried it. It's not great. Anyway, thank you everybody for watching. If you haven't already, click the like button down below. Leave me a comment if you have a question. Hit up my Twitter if you want it to be answered quicker. And I'll see you guys tomorrow. Have a good one. Hopefully, Rams win. So go Rams.